Welcome to Take 5, your 5-minute inspirational message from Solid Rock Drogheda. Yesterday marked the 35th anniversary of the disaster at the nuclear power plant in Chernobyl in the former Soviet Union, what is now, of course, the Ukraine. And the radioactive cloud spread across Europe and particularly in Belarus, great damage done there. Some years ago, I had the privilege of meeting a Russian pastor who was actually much further east in Russia, but as part of the old Soviet Union, he was a fire officer, and he was drafted in with some of his colleagues from Russia to Chernobyl to help with the clear-up. He underwent some great personality changes as a result of what happened. And yet God used that event to actually save him. And now he's pastor of a church. However, the Chernobyl disaster heralded, it was one of the events that led to the collapse of the Soviet Union, because it was something that could not be covered up. And subsequently, there's been books written, and there's been a documentary was shown on Sky TV, and other investigations have been carried out to try to find out what it was that actually caused that massive nuclear meltdown in that power plant. And there were several factors. It wasn't just one thing. There was the fact that the reactors had been poorly designed. There was construction. There was some stuff for construction hadn't been available, so they'd used other methods and took shortcuts or a cheaper way of doing it. And yet the biggest factor of all in the Chernobyl disaster was fear. That because people lived in a climate of fear, that covered up things that people should have been aware of. For example, the engineers in the plant 35 years ago, they were carrying out a test. And the fact was that they should have aborted the test before it ever took place. But they were afraid of the consequences for their careers if they did not carry out the test the way they were supposed to. People could see something was wrong, but were afraid of their superiors and obeyed orders that led to the accident becoming much worse than it might otherwise have been. Also, one of the greatest factors in which ways in which fear affected what happened at Chernobyl was that this was not the first accident at a Soviet nuclear power plant. The problem was all the previous accidents had been covered up. The Soviets claimed that they had a perfect record of safety in their power plants. Whereas if the findings of what had happened in previous accidents had been available, then the engineers in Chernobyl could have reacted accordingly, and the whole thing would never have been as disastrous as it was. But because the authorities were afraid of bad news and tried to hush it up and cover it up, it created this toxic environment that caused so much death and devastation and sickness. Now, that's a real message there for us as Christians, and it's this, that fear is a toxic environment in which to work in. That whatever we are afraid of, if we live our lives in fear, if everything we do, we're looking with fear at what the consequences might be, then we're not going to take the right actions, and we're actually going to make things worse rather than better. It's no surprise that the Soviet Union collapsed shortly after Chernobyl, because Chernobyl, like some other things that happened, was simply a symptom of a climate of fear by which that regime ruled. That's why it's so important that in the church we don't cover up bad news. We don't cover up our failings and our mistakes, but we're honest and we learn from them, and we learn from the mistakes of others. Sometimes I've been accused of being too gloomy because I point out things that are wrong with the church, and I point out mistakes in the church's history. But I believe passionately that only by being honest about our mistakes in the past can we do better in the future. We are not a people of fear. We are a people of faith, but faith must be grounded in honesty and reality. And today I would encourage you, as you live your life for Jesus, to live a life of honesty, to live a life that is open, but to live a life where you learn from your mistakes and move on and do better, because we are not walking by fear. We are walking by faith in Jesus' name. God bless you. Join us again tomorrow for another Take 5, your 5-minute inspirational message from Solid Rock Drogheda.